Okay, I mean, this is probably we knew coming into the season. Whenever these two teams play, it's going to be one of the games of the year. They're both playing well coming into this game. Obviously, Jalen played well statistically last week, but it's pretty evident that he's kind of running with a little like limp. I mean, it just doesn't quite look right physically. But he's not one to he's not LeBron here bitching and moaning about his injury, so you never quite know what's going on. But the Eagles, talent wise, with AJ Brown, they look fucking unreal. Defensively, Reddick is playing like he's Nick Bosa or TJ Watt right now, coming off the edge. And the Cowboys just had one of their classic games where pick six, blocking field goals, returning safeties, punts for 50 yards. When they do that, they just annihilate you. I don't think this game's going to look like that. So when they get into a real game, how can they play? They're a hard team to figure out because I would say their highs, now they've come against shittier opponents, have been just, I mean, NFL style. It looks like college. It's like when Ohio State or Michigan plays a Rutgers or they destroy them. And then you get into these kind of like the last couple of years in these playoff games, they just don't look the same, right? Look at last year, the Tampa game. Now I understand Tampa was terrible, but you watch that Cowboy game, you're like, God, this team has a ceiling to like win the Super Bowl. And then you watch them the next week, it's like they can barely get first downs. So it's hard for me to trust the Cowboys, despite a team that, like, of all the teams that are in like the top 7 or 8 that we consider, their high end sometimes can look like the Bills, the Chiefs, the 49ers. Yet when then they play one of those teams, they don't look like that again. So this one's hard for me, though. Anytime you get these divisional games, the players are comfortable playing. I don't care how big of a stars you have. It's not like they're going to be intimidated. And that Bland guy for the Cowboys, man, he's a stud.
Yeah, and just to close the loop on that other point, I agree with you. The Saints and some of these NFC teams, like the Washington sold because they're like, oh, we have the Cowboys and Eagles, we can't catch them. But some of these other NFC teams, they got to just let the pipe dream go, even though they're in a bad division. I mean, Mike Evans could be a free agent, get something for him. But anyway, yeah, I like the Cowboys. I like the Cowboys plus 3. John, I got to tell you, this is a painful weekend for me. I just told you, I bet Clemson, USC, teams I've been clowning for years. The Cowboys, who I hate in these step-up games, they just seem soft in a way. But yeah, the divisional games, they're comfortable. Dak has owned the Eagles historically, and the home field advantage isn't as great, even though like it's going to be a raucous atmosphere. You're familiar with going there. You're familiar with playing in these loud stadiums, the venues where you're sleeping, where you're staying. So the home field advantage isn't great. But there's a lot of things that I like about the Cowboys. I was off this team after the 49ers game, and I told you this. Dak's not running. He's not moving. And I think that he was just afraid after his injury. Well, he is the past
He's played a lot better. He's played a lot better since.
He's also, I mean, he's number 1 in the NFL in EPA over the past 3 weeks among all quarterbacks. He's running. Like he had 12, I think over the first 6 weeks, he had 11 rushing attempts total. Over the past 2, he's at 13, and he didn't even need to run the second half because they were blowing out the Rams. He's also moving a little bit more. But the play calling, I don't know what got into McCarthy, but he talked about this, but over the past 2 weeks, they're using a lot more motion and they're throwing on first downs. And that's what they need to do. I mean, they were just running into walls on first down, so many first down runs, second down runs, but they finally are starting to throw on first downs, easy throws, getting the ball out quick. And that's how you have to beat the Eagles. You neutralize their pressure, you get the ball out quick passing, because their pass defense isn't any good. I mean, I have it rated 18 in the NFL, and they have no slot corner. So CeeDee Lamb's going to line up in the slot all day long. They have no one who can cover him. I mean, maybe you got to bring one of your wide corners in, but he should have a favorable matchup inside. So I love how this offense has evolved over the past few weeks. Something happened during the bye. Someone got to them because they're throwing on first downs. They're using a lot more motion, ghost motion. Their offensive line's also getting healthy. You should get Tyron Smith back. Tyler Smith's playing at all pro level. They were dealing with some injuries earlier in the season. And you still have a really good center and guard. Like their offensive line, when healthy, is right there with the Eagles. But the defense also has been so it was a question mark after you lose Diggs at one corner spot, and it took them some time to kind of figure it out and settle into their roles. And you mentioned Deron Bland; he's playing really well. And this is a team that's going to play a lot of man coverage, which is there's a couple of things that are scary about this with the Cowboys. Like I think that Dallas can have success on offense. Against an overrated Philly defense right now that's dealing with some injuries. I mean, look, this Eagles team, by the way, they have one loss, but they're 4-1 in one possession games, and they've had some turnover luck against the Vikings. The Pats, they were outgained by like 200 yards. They barely beat the Commanders twice. It hasn't been that pretty, and Hurts can't run the ball. So like that takes he has a hurt knee. They're not calling design runs. He can't take off as well. Against the Dallas pressure, that's massive. It also just takes an element out of the Philly offense that just makes them so much more dangerous. Now they're going to play a lot of man, the Cowboys. AJ Brown's been eating man up. So maybe he'll have, 3 touchdowns again. But this Dallas defense is evolving. They've adjusted to life without Diggs. You even take a guy like Marquise Bell. This is a guy who's an undrafted free agent. If you go by PFF, he's the highest graded linebacker in the entire NFL. Small sample size, but he's playing extremely well. He's an upgrade over Leighton Vander Esch, who's hurt. So they've had some guys that have filled in. They've figured out their roles. Their defense is playing really well. Their offense is actually throwing on first down. Dak's moving. So they look like a completely different team. I think the Eagles are a bit overrated. And they have the Hurts injury. You have the slot corner injury. You have a vulnerable pass D up in the middle of the field. So, I think that these two teams on a neutral field, if you gave them, the Eagles are probably tougher, but they're close. And home field advantage isn't 3 points, especially in a divisional game. I'm going to take the field goal here. I have a sneaky suspicion the Cowboys win this game and make the NFC East race a bit more interesting. Yeah, I did want to ask you about they're on a bye this week, but the Niners, I wanted you to get your thoughts on Niners trading for Young, because I actually liked it. I like the trade that you're a contender. Bosa is dominating on one end. You have Jackson and Farrell just getting blocked into oblivion. You're getting no other edge rush on the other side. And you're giving up a 3rd-round pick. Maybe you just rent him for a season. I think it's worth it, especially if you get a Super Bowl. And then plus, what are the Niners going to do? Draft another kicker with the 3rd round? But I actually like the move for the Niners as a contender. I don't know what the Bears are doing, but did you like that move?
Well, I think they needed to add, so far their defense just hasn't been as physical over the last couple weeks. And, people were talking about trading for a corner. Well, I think there's some question marks about Steve Wilkes right now. Just, the last several weeks, the defense has not been on the same page. And to me, trading for a corner, if D'Amico was your defensive coordinator, it's like, okay, plug and play, scheme, he'll figure it out. It can be very risky scheme-wise. You plug Chase Young in, it's like fucking 3rd and long, go rush, 1st and 10, they're running, be physical. It's a pretty easy plug and play position. Him and Bosa are buddies. They have had a ton of success with major rehab projects like Arden Key, Amenahu, other guys that other teams didn't want become guys that got paid after. This guy does have pretty elite physical skills. I don't think he's ever going to be clearly, TJ Watt, even Nick Bosa, because he doesn't have the bend. But just for what they're looking for, they drafted Drake Jackson high. He's clearly not living up to it. Yeah. They were just desperate, and especially the pay, right? You just wait, a 3rd-round pick. It's not even just a 3rd-round pick. It's a comp pick. So you're talking about a pick in the hundreds. So whether you rent him, maybe he likes it, and you get him like a 1-year, $15 million deal to really try to get that big deal, prove you're healthy. Given what you had to pay, let's even acknowledge Sweat's a better player than Chase. Are they 60 pick difference player? They're both going into free agency, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, I love
because I bet they were interested in Sweat, and they're like, "Hey, we'll offer you our 2nd and our 4th." Given that their 2nd would ideally be like pick 58, and they're like, that's not good enough because they're getting pick 33 for him. So it's the Washington. That's the easiest trade they'll ever make in there, and especially if they were like, we're probably not going to re-sign this guy. Wait, you're going to give us pick 34? Are you fucking nuts?
Yeah. Yeah, that was insane.
They did it last year with Chase Claypool. It netted the Steelers Joey Porter Jr.
And then they went out in the offseason and they wanted to pay, overrated linebackers as their big move. Like Coles is lost there. But I love the move, especially because you just had nothing there. Like you needed something to balance Bosa, and that's going to make Bosa better. And there's a lot of metrics that suggest that Young is at a top 20 pass rusher in the league. Not as consistent, but he's dealt with injuries. And there's something that was just off with the Washington defense overall. They had all these guys in the defensive line that were so good, but then there would be certain games where they would just not dominate, right? Schematically, there was something off that was going on. So I love the move. It was something that the 49ers desperately needed because
they're in second
Drake
place. I mean,
Jackson.
Seattle's in first place right now. And and now you can say they pulled a game out of their ass, but they fucking won and the Niners lost. So, and they get the Niners on a short week at home, that Thanksgiving week. So I think part of it was that. Now, to me, the Leonard Williams trade, and I know they needed some defensive help. They gave a second round pick for also a guy that's going to be a free agent. No, Leonard's solid. I thought that was a little rich. But one thing you say about John and Pete, they ain't scared, So I think that added some emphasis to the 49ers because they probably thought those guys might do something else, a day later. So I think they're just desperate's probably the wrong word, but they're definitely fucking leaking a lot of oil here.
Yeah. They'll be fine. They got to get healthier. I like this move. Don't worry, my Ravens will take care of the Seahawks for you this weekend. So, You'll be feeling better after this.
Well, Jags Niners next week off a bye on the road. I mean, it's borderline must win for the Niners. You can't just lose 4 straight games in the NFL. I mean, that's even though the NFC, I mean, they could cruise to worst case scenario like 10 wins to get in the playoffs, but then all of a sudden you're playing, I don't know, the Cowboys or Lions or something in that wild card week. That wouldn't be easy.